Um, in this story, we've got Tolkien telling a story about a story where Sam and Frodo are in the middle of their story, and we're like looking at them in our book story. But they're kind of looking at themselves meta narratively and saying, hey, I wonder what kind of story we're in. And I'm like, it's like if I was to ask you, or like if I was to kind of like talk to the heavens, hey, what kind of story am I in? Is this a tragedy? Is this a comedy? Is this a farce? Am I like a non-player character where like I'm just like totally irrelevant and everyone else is much more important than I am, and like I'll just get killed in the crossfire, no one is even gonna care? Like what story am I in? And so Sam's asking this question. And so I want to look at these scenes in a little more slow motion, because I think they're crucial to thinking about how we think of our lives as a story. And we can only, I think, understand our lives as a story. And that's why we need to read stories, we need to hear stories, we need to watch stories. We're the storytelling animal. That's what humans are. And so stories are fundamental for us to live, let alone thrive. And so let's jump in where I'm gonna like jump way back in the story where Gandalf is talking to Legolas and Gimli. Here. And this is page 112 in my edition, where it's the chapter of the White Rider. And if you recall, Gandalf has come back from the dead, as it were, although he wasn't really dead because he's not human. And he has this message for the different people, the human, the elf, and the dwarf. And he's got it in this like poetic story fashion. And Gandalf's telling Aragorn, like, here's the message that the council of elves gave for you. To Aragorn, I was bidden to say this: where now are the Dunedain? Elisar, Elisar, why do thy kinsfolk wander afar? Near is the hour when the lost should come forth, and the grey company ride from the north. The dark is the path appointed for thee. The dead watch the road that leads to the sea. To Legolas she sent this word: Legolas, Greenleaf, long under tree, in joy thou hast lived, beware of the sea. If thou hearest the cry of the gull on the shore, thy heart shall then rest in the forest no more. And then there's a message for Gimli too. But the point I wanted to point out here, and we looked at the scene a long time ago, is that it's a ritualized story that gives them a sense of meaning, because they're looking for like what story, man? What's my purpose? What's my mission? And these wise counselors, including Galadriel and these elves, met with another wise counselor named Gandalf. And it's funny because like you could have said like, I could just send you a bullet point list of things you're supposed to do, like, okay, kill the orcs, free the hobbits, and take the dead army. But no, they didn't write it in bullet points. They wrote it in a poem, in a song, in a ritualized story. Why? Why do humans have these ritualized stories, like poems or songs, or even epic stories like this book? And it's that, if you think about important events, the birth of your child, the coming of age of your 15-year-old daughter, quinceañera, the marriage of you or of a relative. The death of a relative. We do ritualized stories at those moments. And we get all dressed up and we like, and you can say, well, it's all pointless, it's all meaningless. It's just like dressing on nothing. And dressing on these words, which doesn't make any difference. The words mean exactly the same thing without the poem, without the rhyme. But do they? And we need them at a thing about a funeral is so important. And sometimes people will even write a poem, or they'll have at least a speech, a sort of prepared speech where they reflect on their loved one's life and how important it was that they did such and such, and how what a good father or good mother they were. And yeah, we need these things to make meaning of life. And so here, Glad was giving them this kind of ritualized story to help them make sense of their life. And then, as I said, we're going to see Frodo and Sam, kind of maybe the two main characters. There's so many characters, but it's hard to know which ones are the main ones. But two of the main characters, we're going to see what they think about their story. And hold on one second, let me just stop for a second. So let me pause here and do some writing on this page and thinking about story. Because I keep talking about storytelling animal and how important stories are, these mythic patterns and archetypes. And so let me step back and say a few things before we get back into Tolkien and say this. There's a philosopher, historian named Yuval Harari. He's actually Israeli. We should think of him because he's in the midst of a war. His country is anyway. But Yuval Harari, one wonderful writer, Israeli writer, says the following. He says he thinks a lot like me, and that everything's a story. Like, so he says, what are stories? Like a story is like a nation. A nation or a people is a story. Money is a story. Facebook is a story. A culture is a story. And by this, like, let's take money for example. Like, what does it mean money is a story? So when I give you a dollar, or if I Venmo you a dollar, what am I giving you? Something real? Well, that dollar in the old days corresponded to a pile of gold that the US has in certain storage facilities. But we got off the gold standard. So that dollar, in a certain sense, doesn't mean anything. It just, it means it's a fiction in this sense. And Yuval Harari says, yeah, it's a fiction, it's a lie. And I don't know, because let me say this, I think he's partly right and he's partly wrong. Let me give a couple more examples here. So is a nation a real thing? Okay, those of us who are American citizens, or even if you're not, like, we're part of this nation of America. Like, I was born here, I was raised here, many of you were even if you weren't, you live here. Are we one people? It's a kind of a story to say that we are. I don't know you. We're not related. We might have, my parents spoke a different language than your parents and my grandparents, but we say this thing. We're a nation, or we're a people, or the African American experience. Is there an African American experience? And I'm speaking here because I'm not African American, but we have Black History Month, and we have African American literature. Should we study African American literature? Is it a real thing? Did Frederick Douglass know anything about Martin Luther King or whoever? But there is a real thing. So I guess here's what I want to say is, I think Harari is correct that they are stories, that they're this kind of thing that we kind of made up. But I don't think it's a lie. I think it's real. And I guess I would ask you, what do you think? Is money real? Because I would say money is real in a sense. It really works. If you have a lot of money, can you like travel to Las Vegas? Yeah. I mean, it really works. It has a real effect in the real world. Is race, let's put race up here. Is race a lie? What race are you a member of? Does it depend on who your grandparents are? Am I white? Am I Filipino? I'm half and half. I'm as white, this is going to be a controversial statement. I'm as white as Barack Obama, because I'm half white. But he's black and I'm white. But so race, in a certain sense, it's a fiction, but it's also real, because I think race is real. And I think Barack Obama really is black. I mean, because it has a real effect in the real world. Like it matters. Like it affects how you get a job and how you apply to university and how you interact with other people of the same ethnic background. And right, V's pointing out there's a subjective reality. And yet, I guess, I don't know if this is what you're saying, V, it's a reality. I'll put the word down. It's a subjective reality. And I guess if you'd like to answer, or you can type it, what do you think? Is money real? Is race real?
Well,
or is
it's complicated because there are truths here, yes, all right. There are nations, there are concepts such as money, so on and so forth, that are culture, there's ethnic culture, so on and so forth. But you could take two people of the same race or the same community, same culture, they won't interpret those concepts the same way because it's how they themselves perceive it. And that's where the subjectiveness comes into the equation.
Right. Right. And so, but isn't it's a tricky thing, because what we're pointing out is that anytime you have something that you're talking about, you are to some extent looking at it from two different perspectives. So which perspective is true, or is there any truth at all? And can I use this? Like, and I don't want to spend too much time on this, but if here's the truth, T in the middle, and here's me looking at it over here, and here's that other guy looking at it over there, they have legitimate perspectives. But is there a truth? I mean, if there's no truth, then there's nothing. How can we talk about anything?
Well,
and then there's nothing.
I agree, but I think it's like it's perspective in a way. Is there's her side, his side, and then there's the truth in the middle.
Right, that's where the subjectiveness comes from, because you have to understand that people dismiss anecdotal experiences, but the fact is that anecdotal is just something that can't be proven, but it doesn't mean it didn't happen. So you also have to take in people's personal experiences that very much influence their perspective, as you call it, and as I call it, subjective reality.
Great. So anyway, I thank you very much for both of you, but I'm just going to summarize what we said, because we can spend all day on this, by saying the truth is partly subjective and it's partly objective. Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to talk about it, because like, how could we like say, like we're talking about justice? Now, justice is a very complicated thing. But if I have a different definition of justice than you, then there's no point in us talking, because we're not getting anywhere. But it is but justice matters a ton. Like if we're in like facing injustice, like we need to talk about justice. Otherwise, we can't. Okay, so let's get back to my drawing here. And say the following. So I think we can disagree to some extent, but I'm arguing that there's a reality, even if it's subjective. It's partly subjective and partly objective, I guess I would say, both.
Well, I mean, I think what you're saying is like if you take race and culture into prospect, see, I'm Creole, but I look white. And but if you see my niece, she looks black. So if nobody ever sees me and I tell them that I'm Creole, they're just gonna assume that I'm black. But in reality, I'm black, Native American, and French, but I look white. So, but in my niece is the same thing, except for she looks black. So it's real, but it's different. As far as culture goes, I don't think race and culture are the same thing. So it just really depends on how the person sees the stuff. So it just really depends on the person. As far as like Cameron was saying, it's subjective.
Exactly. Yeah. See, for me in America, because I'm an immigrant, whiteness is something that's largely a political, and some would probably argue to be a cultural phenomenon. Where I come from, being white is somebody who's a member of the Scandinavian tribe known as the Anglo-Saxons, which settled in the German, what we call today Germany, Sweden, Denmark, Iceland, so on and so forth. That makes you white. So it's very, again, it's very different depending on where you go, because there are people over here, like as y'all have so adequately pointed out, consider themselves white or believe they could pass for white. Whereas if you went to where I came from, people would spot you in a heartbeat and call you out for that and be like, you're absolutely not white. So again, it's all perspective. It's a subject reality. So there you go.
Okay, thank you. So both of you are making excellent points. I think I'm disagreeing slightly because if it's real, I guess, or at least. But let me keep moving on, because I think we mainly agree, because I'm just saying. Okay, let's keep moving, because I'll be in a second. So let's talk about, get back to story. So we were talking about story, and these are stories. Money, nation, a culture, a race, and there. I mean, these stories matter because it's like, who am I? Who are you? And it's obviously partly subjective because like it's got to come from within me, otherwise it's not me. But am I really who I am? Am I really Paul Fortunato? Yes, I am. Like, but I have to like say like I'm an American. That's part of who I am. I'm from New Jersey. I am a New York Yankee fan, like I'm ashamed to say. Like there's these things that make me who I am. And then there's all these things like money, race, nation, which are also part of me, which I'm asserting that they're real. I mean, they have a reality to them. And they're not, because Harari is saying that they're fictions. They're not real at all, fundamentally. And I'm saying they're fundamentally real. Okay, so we have to do ritual. So let's put ritual in here. And I started off by talking about the ritualized story. And I guess I'll just put ritualized story, where Gandalf is telling Aragorn and Legolas, like, here's who you are, here's your story, here's your mission. And they absorb it, and they use that partly to guide who they are. And they recognize that there's a truth there. And so, and it's told in this ritualized form. And that's not just told in like a bullet point sort of thing. It's told in a poem, in a song. And I am going to use Judaism as an example here, because I just know more about it, where you have is being Jewish real? I mean, absolutely it is. It's based partly on this story, which it's partly fictional in the sense that, like, do they all have the same DNA? No. But there is something real in being Jewish. And part of it is from the embodied story that they've lived through, whether that's literally getting part of your body cut off in a circumcision that makes you a Jewish male, or going through a bar mitzvah or a bat mitzvah, where you go through this ritual that's been going on for the last 4,000 years, and you go through the Passover where you read the story of Moses and God through Moses saving your people from slavery. And you say, that's who I am. That's my identity. If you're Jewish. And you read about the Holocaust. And so is it important to read about the Holocaust? Absolutely. Like this tragic, horrible story is part of who you are if you're Jewish. And so these stories go into the big story of being Jewish. And that helps you create your identity. And the same thing goes, like, we have Black History Month. Why do we have Black History Month? Where we read Black literature and we study Black culture and African Americans and others, but also especially African Americans, they go through these rituals and kind of a reading, and sometimes they go to a play, and you sing, and you have a, if you're in a church, you go into your church and celebrate it with Black church culture. Or if you are going to the World Cup or watching it on TV, like most of us, and I was going to this bar a few years ago, and we were watching the World Cup match, and this guy had one of those old green Mexican soccer jerseys. You ever see those? Very distinctive. And one of my friends was Mexican, and he's like, "Hey, Mexico! Hey, what about like this player and that player?" And like they connected like so strongly, and like we've been basically partying all day just because of the thing that he was wearing on his jersey. And you form your identity partly based on these ritualized stories, whether it's getting dressed up or watching a World Cup match, and like the chants and who the main players are, and the history. And a friend of mine was from Argentina, and like when Argentina was going to the World Cup last year, like he got a ticket and he flew to go watch the World Cup match. He did he spent like tons of dollars, I don't know, like $4,000 just to get over there and watch this game with his fellow Argentines. Like, why? Because that's his identity. And so I'm trying to make the point about these ritualized stories and how they help form our identity. And why do we do these? Is it just like people fooling us into spending a lot of money? Like my friend, like buying that plane ticket at the last minute? Partly it's that sort of consumer culture is definitely part of this capitalism, but there's something real there. And so here's my take on what's real here. It trains, it's going to be really weird, your attention. It trains, these ritualized stories train your attention. And I've talked about attention before, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it, except to say this. Well, I always draw myself looking at the world. So here I am. Here I'm looking at the world. There's W world. But there's tons of pixels of color and light and information and sound and feel and smell that are coming in. So what do I attend to? What do I focus on? Which means, what do I block out? I need to black out the stuff. Otherwise, I have too much information overload and I can't see anything. And we train our attention through these ritualized stories and these storytelling. And that's why you go to the World Cup. And that's why we go to Jewish rituals if you're Jewish, or Black history rituals if you're Black. And they train your attention to see like what is relevant, what do I need to focus on, what's relevant, what do I pay attention to, where do I find meaning, and where is the value? Like I need to value certain things, I need to prioritize certain things, which means I need to block out the other stuff. And if I'm Jewish, let's take our historic moment here where there's a war in Israel. And I am called up by my government in Israel, like, hey, we need you to be ready to sacrifice your life for your country because your country is under attack. from within in the Civil War, actually. And I go, and I'm ready to die, and I'm ready to kill, and I'm ready to, because I focus on that one thing, and everything else I block out, like, because that's who I am. And many young men and women, Jews and Israelis are going there. Okay, so you're training our attention because you are what you desire. I'll split this down for you. And I'm taking several steps here, so pardon me, but this is kind of like my philosophy, so I'm sort of laying it all out here in the context of Lord of the Rings, where, you know, what you want is key, what you desire, what you love. And the thing is, what do you want? What do I want? What do I desire? The problem is we get confused because there's kind of like core desires, and there's what we call like little desires. And by little desires, I mean like, I want ice cream. I want to sleep in. Like, these are things that I want. Like this morning when I got up, I was like, do I really want to get up? I want to sleep in. Like, so I have these little desires. But if I acted on all those, what would happen? Would I be able to exercise my core desires? Like, what are my core desires? I want to love people. I want a mission in life. I want to create value. I want to make something important. Like, these are things that are more important than ice cream or sleeping in. But if sleeping in and ice cream prevent me from getting love and from creating value, like doing good work, for example, like if I just slept in this morning or slept in many nights, many mornings, I'm not getting any work done. And then I'm not doing things that I really want to do. So am I doing what I want to do? In a certain sense, yes. But in a more important sense, no. So that's why it's really important to think about, what do I attend to? Because that's how I'm going to train my desires to make sure the little desires aren't putting the kibosh on my core desires. So that's, I mean, this is like a really big concept here about your whole life, in a sense, of my whole life. But I think that's what's at stake in these stories and in reading just the story like the Lord of the Rings. And so we need to fight against confusion. Because what does Amazon and Facebook and eBay want me to want? They want me to get confused so that I'll buy more stuff and spend more money on things which don't really matter. And so we need to fight against that confusion that these big corporations, these big tech companies are making so much money on by confusing us. Okay, so that's a big preface, and I know there's a thing in the chat, but I need to keep going. I'll come back to the chat. Back to the Lord of the Rings. So let's go to 348 in my book. And so what we have here is a crucial moment in the whole Lord of the Rings book, because Frodo and Sam, they've been in this fellowship, they've got this mission, they've got a really impossible mission which is almost hopeless. It's like on the edge of hopelessness, facing the most evil and most powerful person in the world, and they're very weak and small, and they're coming to the end because they're coming to their desired end, which is to go to Mordor. And here's how they're looking at it, and they're climbing these stairs and they're resting. Haven't you had no sleep, Mr. Frodo? He said, what's the time? Seems to be getting late. No, it isn't, said Frodo, but the day is getting darker instead of lighter, darker and darker. As far as I can tell, it isn't midday yet, and you've only slept for about 3 hours. I wonder what's up, said Sam. Is there a storm coming? And if so, it's going to be the worst there ever was. We shall wish We were down in a deep hole, not stuck under a hedge. He listened. What's that? Thunder or drums or what is it? I don't know, said Frodo. It's been going on for a good while now. Sometimes the ground seems to tremble. Sometimes it seems to be the heavy air throbbing in their ears. Sam looked around. Where's Gollum? He said. Hasn't he come back yet? No, said Frodo. And so, but what I focus on in the scene is they're at the end. And they're getting close to the Dark Lord's lair, his realm. And there's a storm coming because Dark Lord's armies are gathering and about to attack the humans and the elves and the dwarves at Minas Tirith. And they're about to try to take over the world. And little do they know that Frodo and Sam are here trying to destroy this ring of power. And the storm comes. So like here comes the armies. They're about to attack. And they're also, Frodo and Sam are about to face this entrance into Mordor. And little do they know, I mean, they know that there's orcs there. They know that there's bad army, the enemy army soldiers there. But they don't know that there's a huge spider there that's going to attack them. And so here they're reflecting on this dark moment. And here's what they say. I hope he's up to no tricks, says Sam. And he's talking about Gollum. And anyway, I hope he doesn't fall into other hands, as you might say. Because if he does, we shall soon be in for trouble. At that moment, a rolling and rumbling noise was heard again, louder now and deeper. The ground seemed to quiver under their feet. I think we are in for trouble anyway, said Frodo. I'm afraid our journey is drawing to an end. Maybe, said Sam. But where there's life, there's hope. As my gaffer used to say, and eat a victuals, as he most ways used to add. You have a bite, Mr. Frodo, and a bit of sleep. So even as they're facing this horrible fate of probably getting killed by the enemy, there's faithful Sam making light of it. There's one thing about these hobbits is they have a sense of humor, even at the darkest moment, and that's something that's comforting to us. And then as they're facing this darkest moment, they get a sign, a symbol. Do symbols matter? I'm big into symbols, so I haven't said it right. So here they are, they're getting ready to enter the Dark Lord's realm. And this image appears before them, which is just a chance luck that the sunlight breaks through this one moment on this statue. And here's what they see. There, far away beyond Sad Gondor now, overwhelmed in shade, the sun was sinking, finding at last the hem of the great slow-rolling pall of cloud, and falling in an ominous fire towards the yet unsullied sea. The brief glow fell upon a huge sitting figure, still and solemn as the great stone kings of Argonath. The years had gnawed it, and violent hands had maimed it. Its head was gone, and in its place was set in mockery a round, rough-hewn stone brutally painted by savage hands, in the likeness of a grinning face with one large red eye in the midst of his forehead. Upon its knees, the mighty chair, and all about the pedestal were idle scrolls mixed with the foul symbols of the maggot folk of Mordor used. The maggot folk of Mordor used. Suddenly, caught by the level beams, Frodo saw the old king's head. It was lying rolled away up by the roadside. Look, Sam, he cried, startled into speech. Look, the king has got a crown again. The eyes were hollow, and the carven beard was broken. About the high-stern forehead there was a coronal of silver and gold. A trailing plant with flowers like small white stars had bound itself across the brows as if in reverence for the fallen king. And in the crevices of his stony hair, yellow stonecrop gleamed. They cannot conquer forever, said Frodo. And then suddenly the brief glimpse was gone. Sun dipped and vanished, and as if at the shuttering of a lamp, black night fell. And at this moment of despair, and at this statue that has been destroyed and the heads chopped off by the bad guys of a previous human king who was a good king in the past, the head is there, and the light just breaks through for that moment to make it look like, it's not really a crown, it looks like there's a crown because there's a bunch of flowers, and there's a bunch of sunlight hitting the flowers, so it looks like gold and silver. And is this a real thing? Literally, no, it's just luck that the sun broke through at that moment. Is it a real sign of something real? And I guess I'm saying yes, that I mean, not that like the gods or the universe made this happen, but justice is real. Kingship is real, like good rule is real. And they're fighting on the side of justice and good kingship. And so, I mean, this is just luck, and I don't think there's anything like mystical or spiritual, but the world is real, and it really has these patterns in it. So, and I guess I'm sort of sitting on the fence, like, is it really like meaning something to them? It's meaning something to them. Really. I mean, it's subjective. So let's get back to that subjective that we were talking about earlier. But even if it's subjective, it's still real. I guess that's what I'm saying. It really matters to them. It really shows them where they're going. This is part of your mission, guys. Like, this is what you're fighting for. Okay, let's keep going. Because we have that crucial moment where they talk about story, and again, like this, we keep seeing these dark moments. This dark moment keeps getting drawn out. So here's another episode of the dark moment where they're thinking about how hopeless it is, because they have just seen the 9 riders, the Black Riders, the Witch King of Angmar, who's like the formerly human guy who's now a wraith, who's really powerful and threatens Frodo, like this. They're all hiding, so they hide successfully and they go away. But they've got this sense of no hope, and it says this: Frodo stirred, and suddenly his heart went out to Faramir. The storm has burst at last, he thought. This great array of spears and swords is going to Osgiliath. Will Faramir get across in time? He guessed it, but he did not know the hour. And who can now hold the fords when the king of the 9 riders comes? And other armies will come. I am too late. All is lost. I tarried on the way. All is lost. Even if my errand is performed, no one will ever know. There will be no one I can tell. It will be in vain. Overcome with weakness, he wept, and still the host of Morgul crossed the bridge. So he sees this huge army, this powerful army, like the Nazis, the Russians, about to go destroy their friends like Faramir, and he's like, even if I do the right thing, even if my errand is performed, no one's ever going to know. Like, the army's still going to win that battle. He thinks. So it seems so hopeless. And then we have that thing we read last time. And I'm going to read different parts of it this time. It's kind of a long passage. So let me just start by rereading the beginning of this passage where Sam is doing that meta-narrative moment, saying, what kind of story am I in? And he says, yes, that's so, said Sam. And we shouldn't be here at all if we'd known more about it before we started. I suppose it's often that way, the brave things, the old tales and songs, Mr. Frodo, adventures, as they used to call them. I used to think that they were things the wonderful folk in the stories went out and looked for because they wanted them, because they were exciting and life was a bit dull. So is the adventure of facing evil and fighting for the good something that we do because we're bored? I'm bored. I think I'll join the army. And that can happen. Or I'm bored. I think I'll start a company, or I think I'll go volunteer in a poor neighborhood. So in a certain sense, yeah, we do these things because we're bored. But what he's saying is, like, the big actions, the important, brave things, they just happen to you. Are they going to happen to you and me? And I would submit, yes, if you are paying attention. So this story helps us what? It helps us pay attention to that call of these great acts, of fighting for something important, of trying to build something important, whether that's like building a legacy for African American culture and literature, or building a building for your town, or building a company that creates jobs and good things for people. Those are big tasks, or fighting to protect your people from an enemy, like in a war. These are big tasks which are real. They're subjective, but they're also partly objective. They're really real. Okay, so he goes through this whole thing. He's feeling that call to adventure. And he's like, we didn't choose this thing. This thing sort of chose us. And we're kind of in the middle of it. And then, they talk about, just last time we talked about like the story of Beren and Luthien. And I guess I just say here, like, they told a story. Sam tells the story of Beren and Luthien, who were these two people, a human and an elf, who went into Mordor, into the realm of King Sauron, to attack him. And this is a story that makes sense of their story, because they're two little people too, Frodo and Sam, and they're doing the same thing. And it's similarly hopeless, but Beren and Luthien, actually, they did win, although Beren lost his hand. And Frodo and Sam are doing the same thing. And is Frodo going to lose his hand? And those of you who know the story, he's going to lose a finger. He's going to get his finger chopped off, and I guess I'm getting this with it. I'll just tell you the ending for a moment here. At the end, when Frodo and Sam are about to destroy the ring in Mordor, Frodo gives into temptation. Even though he's the good guy, he's tempted to keep the ring. And he says, and I'm just going to say this briefly, now that I have come to do this deed, I choose not to do it. And he keeps the ring. And Sam's like, no, don't do that, bro. We're not supposed to destroy that ring. But it's tempting. Like humans, we want things, we want power. And Frodo gives into that power. It has corrupted him enough. But at that moment, who shows up? Good old Gollum. And Gollum attacks Frodo. And what does Gollum want? Gollum wants the ring, so he bites off Frodo's finger and gets the ring. And so Frodo loses his finger, Gollum gets the ring, and he's so excited that he falls into the lava and destroys the ring. He destroys the ring. Falls to destruction. So anyway, that's we're not reading that part, so sorry, you can watch that in the next movie in the series. But getting back to here, we have Frodo and Sam facing this difficulty, facing this story, and they start to talk about songs and tales, or stories. Now, the story is a big theme, obviously, here. So this is Sam talking. Still, I wonder if we shall ever be put into songs or tales. We're in one, of course, but I mean, put into words, told by the fireside or read out of a great book, great big book with red and black letters, years and years afterwards. And people will say, let's hear about Frodo and the Ring. And they'll say, yes, that's one of my favorite stories. Frodo was very brave, wasn't he, Dad? Yes, my boy, the famousest of the hobbits. And that's saying a lot. Saying a lot too much, said Frodo as he laughed. A long, clear laugh from his heart. Such a sound had not been heard in those places since Sauron came to Middle-earth. To Sam, suddenly, it seemed as if all the stones were listening and the tall rocks leaning over them. But Frodo did not heed them. He laughed again. Why, Sam, he said, to hear you somehow makes me as merry as if the story was already written. You've left out one of the key characters, Samwise the Stout-Hearted. I want to hear more about Sam, Dad. Why didn't they put in more of his talk, Dad? That's what I like. It makes me laugh. And Frodo wouldn't have got far without Sam, would he, Dad? Now, Mr. Frodo, said Sam, you shouldn't make fun. I was serious. So was I, said Frodo. And so I am. We're going on a bit too fast, you and I, Sam. Are still stuck in the worst places of the story. And it is all too likely that some will say at this point, shut the book now, Dad. We don't want to read anymore. Maybe, said Sam. But I wouldn't be the one to say that. Things done and over and made into part of the great tales are different. Why, even Gollum might be good in a tale, better than he is to have you by you anyway. And he used to like tales himself once, by his own account. I wonder if he thinks he's the hero or the villain. Gollum, he called. Would you like to be the hero? Now, where's he got to again? And so this is a foreshadowing, as it's called. Is Gollum the hero or the villain? And the short answer is both. He's the villain insofar as he steals the ring from Frodo in the end by biting off his finger. But he's the hero because he helps destroy the ring. So he was actually crucial to this whole story. And again, this is not the part that we're reading, but since this is foreshadowing it, I'll talk about it, that this shows why it was so important that they not kill Gollum. And we saw that before when Frodo thinks about, maybe we should just kill Gollum because this guy's he's so dangerous. And he wants the ring. And then he remembers back to what Gandalf said. And because Frodo says to Gandalf, it's a pity we didn't kill him. Or Bilbo didn't kill him when he had the chance. And Gandalf says, pity? It was pity that stayed Bilbo's hand. It was that merciful act of friendship with a fellow person, even though it's like a kind of corrupted person, Gollum, who, you don't know, maybe there's something important that he can do. And it turns out there was something important that he was going to do, both leading them into this place and biting off the finger. So, okay, let's jump to, I see there's let me pause it and like check the comments here. Yes. Poor Sam, he clearly did not imagine his life turning out like this. Yeah, Sam is in some ways, is he the hero of the story? I mean, there's several heroes, but Sam really is the hero, isn't he? I mean, he kind of thinks like, oh, you're just kidding, Mr. Frodo, like making fun of me, putting me in this tale. And Frodo's like, I'm serious. You're the hero, Sam. I wouldn't have gotten anywhere without you. Like, your friendship was the key even though like you're weak and you're little and you're kind of dumb, your love and your friendship saved my ass. Like, there's no way I would have made it this way. Isn't that true? And so, yeah, so one of the stories here is friendship, like how important friendship is. And if we have time, we'll look back at a scene about that, but I'm gonna keep going. And so we get to the layer of Shelob. So, and so just, yeah, we're gonna finish up with Shelob, and then next time we'll finish. We need to get to the end. We're not gonna get to the end today. But Tolkien, in his many stories that he wrote, has different figures which are evil. We have the orcs, Sauron, Morgoth, who's the Lord of Sauron, and you have various. There's actually dragons. Dragons are sort of a traditional evil being. There's no dragons in this particular story, but in the Hobbit, which was the precursor to this story, Bilbo faced a dragon. But one of the other key evil beings are big spiders. And it seems to me, just looking at Tolkien's writings, he probably was afraid of spiders. I don't know if you're afraid of spiders, but there's several instances where the bad monster is a huge spider. And this is one of them, and this one's called Shelob. And it's this being that's in the tunnels near the entrance to Mordor. Yes, good point, Dave. Yeah, Sam was never cooked, by the way, unlike Frodo, actually. But here, so let's just read the entrance to Shelob's lair in this chapter. It's called Shelob's lair. And as they go on, it smells foul. There's this foul reek. And it's called Torek Ungol, Shelob's lair. Out of it came a stench, not the sickly odor of decay in the meads of Morgul, but a foul reek, as if filth unnameable were piled and hoarded in the dark within. Is this the only way, Smeagol? Said Frodo. Yes, he answered. Yes, we must go in this way now. Do you mean to say you've been through this hole? Said Sam. True, but perhaps you don't mind bad smells. Gollum's eyes glinted. He doesn't know what we mind, stuck impressions. No, he doesn't. But Smeagol can bear things. Yes, he's been through. Oh, yes, right through. It's the only way. And what makes the smell, I wondered, said Sam. It's like, well, I would like to say some beastly hole the orcs all weren't, with 100 years of their filth in it. Well, said Frodo, orcs or no, it's the only way. We must take it. So they take a deep breath and they go in and you think like it's really smelly thing. And one of the things that smells bad is, of course, the spider itself. But the other thing that smells bad is all the dead bodies of all the beings that the spiders eat. The spiders keeps eating it, and then leaves like some carcasses there, and also some poop, whatever spiders poop. And so so they go in, and again, even though this is the darkest of dark places, and is this a trap? This is a trap. Gollum has this plan. Hey, I'll lead them into this place that the orcs don't go into, so it's safe in that sense. But the reason the orcs don't go into it is that Shelob's there, and nothing gets past Shelob. Nobody gets past Shelob, they think. So how's Frodo going to get past her? But they do have a light. And so let's see what is Frodo's tool or weapon that's going to get him through this trap. And Sam and Frodo go into it, And at a certain point, Sam realizes, I think this is a trap. It's a trap. And he laid his hand upon the hilt of his sword. And as he did so, he thought of the darkness of the barrel whence it came. I wish old Tom was near us now, he thought. Then, as he stood, darkness about him and a blackness of despair and anger in his heart, it seemed to him that he saw a light in his mind, almost unbearably bright at first, as a sun ray to the eyes of one long hidden in a windowless pit. Then the light became color, green, gold, silver, white. Far off, as in a little picture drawn by elven fingers, he saw the Lady Galadriel singing, standing on the grass in Lorien, and gifts were in her hands. And you, ring bearer, he heard her say, remote but clear, for you I have prepared this. So they're remembering back to this gift that the Lady Galadriel gave them. The bubbling hiss drew nearer, and there was a creaking as of some great jointed thing that moved with slow purpose in the dark. A reek came on before it. Master, master, cried Sam, and life and urgency came back into his voice. The lady's gift, the star glass, a light to you in dark places, she said. It was to be. The star glass. So this is, he had grabbed this before when he saw the 9 riders, and he grabbed that as a kind of token of goodness. And so this is, again, what I keep calling ritualized story. So they have this story from Galadriel, which links them to the story, the ancient story of Beren and Luthien, their way back ancestors, thousands of years earlier. Think about the Jews. Like if you're a Jewish person in 2023, you do these rituals that link you to Abraham and Moses and David. And you have these physical things like unleavened bread and wine and stuff. And so here we have Frodo with the star glass from Galadriel, which ties them back to their ancient forebears who fought against the evil as well. So they're part of that same story. And this gives them hope. And so Sam's telling him to get it. The star glass, wondered Frodo, as one answering out of sleep, hardly comprehending. Why, yes. Why, had I forgotten it? A light when all other lights go out. And now, indeed, light alone can help us. Slowly his hand went to his bosom, and slowly he held aloft the phial of Galadriel. For a moment it glimmered, faint as a rising star struggling in heavy earthward mists. And then, as its power waxed and hope grew in Frodo's mind, it began to burn and kindled to a silver flame, minute heart of dazzling light, as though Earendil had himself come down from the high sunset paths with the last silveril upon his brow. The darkness receded from it until it seemed to shine in the center of a globe of airy crystal, and the hand that held it sparkled with a white fire. So, is this magic? And it's not magic in the Tolkienian sense, because magic is this desire for power. It's elven craft, taking a reality that's there and crafting it into something powerful, something natural in that sense. And I'm not sure how to explain that, because I don't know if Tolkien ever explained it. And let me just look in the chat here. A lot of comments. So let me just comment on them real quick. Sam is the hero behind the scenes nobody talks about. Yes. So in any story, there typically is a kind of unsung hero who's so important. And think about sports. Someone was talking about or music. I was watching a YouTube video the other day of a band that I kind of worship, speaking of ritual, named Led Zeppelin. Are you guys familiar with Led Zeppelin? And, you know, the key people of Led Zeppelin are the singer, Robert Plant, and Jimmy Page, the guitarist. But someone in the comments of this YouTube video said, the unsung hero, John Paul Jones, the bassist, who's always there, always quiet, but always present. And he like held up the whole band. And so in a certain sense, that's like Frodo. He's always there. He holds up the band. And then I'm just going to read B's point. My point is that the ring seeks the wickedness inside individual people and exploits it to corrupt them. Sam was never corrupted, as he was not wicked in any fashion known to the One Ring. That is the hallmark of a true hero, you know, being truly good and whatnot. And so, thank you for that. Yes, B. What B's point is that you know, one of the reasons the ring has power is it knows your weakness and it knows how to tempt you. And so it tempts, in the end, it tempts even Frodo, it tempted Boromir earlier, it tempted other people, it tempts, of course, Gollum. But it can't get into Sam because Sam is so good. At a certain point, and we're not reading this part, he gets the ring and he's tempted to become a great gardener. He's like, yes, I'll build these great gardens. And it's like, that's not really that big of a deal. but he's a gardener, so he loves building big gardens. Okay. So so they get into the trap, and Frodo faces the spider Shelob with this phial, with this light. And even though this is this huge, powerful monster, it's afraid. So here's what it says. Here's what Frodo says. I'm losing my voice and take a swig of water here. Where he says, no, that's fine. It says, stand, stand. He cried desperately. Running is no use. Slowly, the eyes of the spider crept nearer. Galadriel, he called. And gathering his courage, he lifted up the phial once more. The eyes halted. For a moment, their regard relaxed, as if some hint of doubt troubled them. Then Frodo's heart flamed within him. And without thinking what he did, whether it was folly or despair or courage, he took the phial in his left hand, and with his right hand drew his sword. Sting flashed out. And the sharp elven blade sparked in the silver light, but at its edges a blue fire clicked. Then holding the star aloft and the bright sword advanced, Frodo, the Hobbit in the Shire, walked steadily down to meet the eyes. They wavered. Doubts came into them as the light approached. One by one they dimmed, and slowly they drew back. No brightness so deadly had ever afflicted them before. From sun and moon and star they had been safe underground. Now a star had descended into the very earth. Still it approached, and the eyes began to quail. One by one they all went dark. They turned away, and a great bulk beyond the light's reach heaved its huge shadow in between. They were gone. And so at this moment of courage, Frodo grabs in one hand the phial, in the other hand his sword, even though it's like this little sword, it's like a little knife. And he chases the spider away. And so, was he really a dangerous soldier at that moment? I mean, in a certain sense, no. Like if there was like if you or I were facing him, he would be just like this little guy. But he has this courage partly from this light that connects him to that story. So that story gives him courage, gives him a sense of who I am. Like, I am this hero fighting against evil. And so that gives him that courage at that moment of terror. But of course, and I guess I'll just run to the end here since we're running time. He gets stuck. So in the end, even though he's able to face down the evil of Shelob, Shelob's going to sneak around when he's not looking and stab him. And it's portrayed pretty well in the film. I guess I'll just stop sharing for a second. I'm just talking about the end here. My voice was kind of, let me just grab a little bit of peanuts. Give me my some voice here. And so he's going through the tunnel. He and Sam, they think Shelob's gone, so he lets down his guard. And Sam is running ahead because he's trying to like face anything that's in front of him. So Sam and Frodo's behind. But while Sam is ahead, Shelob attacks Frodo, so Frodo's alone. And Frodo's not looking, so he kind of looks around and then like he gets stabbed by the big spider. And at that moment, Gollum, who has been crafting this plan all along, attacks Sam so that Sam can't help Frodo. So, and then while, Sam's going to fight Gollum and he's going to eventually get rid of Gollum, but it's enough time for Shelob to stab Frodo. And like what spiders do, they wrap them up on all these webs and like, and then Sam sees him and he thinks he's dead. But is he dead? No, because as you might know,